Thank you very much. I've come here to India today to learn. I've learned a couple of things already this morning, which is Anil Shah, which is his name in Europe, has a better name here, Himanshu, so thank you very much for inviting me, Anil. Before I start my presentation, I'll just give you a few words on my own background. As you can hear, my English is not perfect. It's called Dinglish. It's because I'm actually originating out of Denmark. And I still partially live in Denmark, but I also have a place in England, and I travel across Europe quite a lot because that's my job. I run the CSI teams for Europe. And my young daughter, who is now 15, she was asked the other day when she started in a new boarding school in Denmark, "What's your daddy doing?" And she says, "Yeah, he's running this very secret project called CSI," thinking that this was the crime scene investigation. So I have to go back and teach her as well that CSI in IBM terms means that you are working with the computer services industry, which is your guys here. So that's my job. It's a privilege to be here because we see in Europe the growing influence of the Indian SIs, and we also understand very much that we need to collaborate a lot better with you guys in terms of winning more in the marketplace together. So I'm here to learn, to listen, and to meet as many of you as possible. I've structured my presentation here, hi Henrik, around IT services, the market environment we see. And I actually, when I was structuring the presentation, I came to think about an old mentor of mine. Some of you who work for CSC will know the name Mike Laurie. He's now the CEO for CSC Worldwide. And I have the privilege to have worked for him for a couple of years when he was in Europe. And he kept mentioning to me that when you do a presentation, when you work with clients, you've got to think about reading the market. You've got to understand what's happening in the market. And you've got to understand your audience. And that means also you have to understand what the customers are thinking, what's actually driving demand for the customer. So that's kind of how I want to structure my presentation. We're going to talk about the market environment facing the systems integrators. We're going to talk about innovation as part of that agenda because this is what our clients are requesting. And then I'm going to talk about, in practical terms, how do we pick our joint plays, how do we actually collaborate together, and finally some recommended actions. Before I actually start the presentation itself, I would like to also just spend a couple of minutes going down memory lane because the first thing that happened when I came to India this morning was yesterday morning actually, was the taxi driver, very friendly fellow who welcomed me in the airport. He said, "Have you been to India before?" And that actually brought some things back from my memory. I spent probably 22 years ago, I had I needed to do the all control delete thing in my life. You know what that means? So I had been through a very difficult divorce, and I had to kind of clean my mind. So I jumped on an adventure trip to go to India and to see some of the touristic sites in India. This one probably being one of the highlights, and this will be my little commercial about India now. The things that I have seen and I still adore. Then I took another direction, which was to go up to Schlegel in the north. We stayed on some houseboats on a lake. And after that, we decided to go trekking in the Himalayas with a backpack and everything else. Something I can highly recommend. I lost 2 stones, which is about 13 kilos, during those 3 weeks in the Himalayas. And it's a magnificent experience. The roads there, I would say, they are a little bit more scary than the road you experience from the airport here. Vertical drops of about 2,000 meters and only passable by 1 truck at a time. This one here being the road leading into to Leh in the northern part of the Himalayas. And you meet some of these trucks there, and they are just wonderful pieces of art. And some of them stay on the road, and some of them fall down, and most of them actually stay. And so you will also see that there's a lot of good warning signs on the road. This one here I particularly enjoyed. And then we went trekking, and this is the Nunankun Massif, which is about 7,200 meters. And I actually managed to get to 6,250 meters before my body gave up. I wouldn't recommend you do that in one day. It takes a little bit of acclimatization to get there. You need to build up enough blood cells, red blood cells, to cope with the oxygen level there. But it's not really a hard climb. To be honest with you, you can drive in a normal car up to around 5,600 meters, which is pretty close to the 6,250 meters we got to. But this is the fellow that we actually went up. We didn't need to do any climbing really. It was not mountaineering, it was like trekking. Only a few glaciers to pass with ropes and crampons on. But at the end of the day, we were lucky enough to survive that. We got safely back and into more civilization. Met this nice fellow here who taught me a little bit about Buddhism and Omani Pratnahum, which is something it is nice to sit there and reflect about. And you can understand this fellow, he is one of the luckiest guys in the world because he lives there and he has one of the best views in the world. So this will be my little commercial about India. I'm happy to be back here. I'm sorry it took 22 years, but I would be happy to come back again next year. So, now for the business side. Computer services industry, what do we see? This market is about $750 million. And when I look at the three biggest chunks in that marketplace, it's about IT outsourcing, it's about business processes outsourcing, and it's consultancy and systems integrations. And we see our systems integrators moving across all three dimensions of this picture here. The compound growth rate in the coming years is about 5%. I know you guys here from the Indian SIs will say 5% is nothing, we can't survive on that, we need to do much better, and you are doing much better than that from the growth perspective. But this is the overall worldwide market as we see it, and we also see that there is a big transition going on, and this is where I'm going to pick a little bit on the industry analyst. IDC has written a white paper which they call the third platform wave, and this is highly recommended reading. And what they're basically saying is we are moving from the phase one, which was about dumb terminals to mainframes back in the early 80s, that then became distributed systems, type server, up through the 80s into the 90s, and now we are in a situation where we are talking about billions of end users, millions of devices and applications that are all interconnected on smarter solutions, on mobile platforms. And this actually transformed this whole industry. So what you used to see from a systems integration point of view is going to change dramatically with the introduction of the cloud. IBM has geared itself towards the cloud. We have done many acquisitions in that space, the latest one being SoftLayer, which is basically where you can buy servers by the meter at very, very low cost and provision it all on the web. Within 15 minutes you can be up and running. Whether you are a systems integrator and you want to provision that service to your clients, you can do that, or you can do it as an end user directly. So things are moving very rapidly in the direction of the cloud. And we are going to join that journey together with you. We have the right components in place to do it. As we see that, we also understand that the systems integrators are coming from different angles. Some of you are highly consultancy-led and will be moving in the direction of outsourcing. Some of you are outsourcing-led and will be moving into higher value services like the consultancy services. And this is perfectly okay, and we expect that this transition is going to happen, and our teams are ready to support you on the journey. Now, at this point in time, in order to satisfy the demands of my younger daughter, who still thinks that CSI is crime scene investigation, I would like to call upon some industry analysts to help us here. Because with the transformation going on like it is, it's a fair thing to ask yourself, what is actually a systems integrator? And I came across this definition from Canales the other day, which I think is a very clear roadmap description of how you define a systems integrator in the year 2013. You can start by saying, are we a channel company? Yes, we are. And then you go down the chain here and you see, are we selling directly to end users? If the answer is yes, then we go down and we ask ourselves, are we a communication or an IT company? If the answer to yes is that, then we go down and we ask ourselves, are we selling to consumers for more than 50% of the revenue? If the answer is no to that, then we go over and become either a systems integrator or a reseller. And majority of you that are sitting here in the audience, I guess, are now on the path where you say that yes, we are selling more than 50% in IT integration services to our end user clients, so we are systems integrators. Are we all in the right audience? Thanks God. Good. So, In IBM, what we do when we stand in front of such an audience is we try to understand what are the key drivers for the audience. And we do that, and we have invested millions of dollars over the last couple of years to drive what we call the annual C study. The C-level study is about asking 1,500 top-level executives about their views on the industry and what's the driving forces in the industry. And these executives are picked from CIOs, from CFOs, from CMOs, and all of this is public available information that we share with our clients in order to set the agenda. We share it with you as systems integrators, so you can understand how IBM is translating the information we get from our customers into solutions for the marketplace that we hope will resonate with our end user clients. And what we learn from these studies is that the CIO is not necessarily always on the same wavelength as the CMO. As an example here, if you look at the responses we got from CIO versus CMOs on the use of analytics, they are more or less in agreement that this is a main driving force for them. If we look at the use of social and mobility networking, the CMOs seems to be standing ahead in terms of willingness to address and invest in this area versus the CIO. So there is some stickiness in the traditional IT organization and around infrastructure. And the stickiness actually translates that 75% of all the budgets that are used on IT are actually used for maintaining existing systems versus going against new application areas, against innovation. So IBM's agenda is very much about driving innovation, and you heard that from some of the video presentations here as well. This is where we see the higher value spaces. If we can innovate and we can explain to our clients what the innovation will bring, then we can take them on a journey together that hopefully will be a win-win. So our approach is very much embedded into how do we actually integrate innovation into our existing hardware, software, and middleware stack. How do we enhance this from the experience we have from thousands of client engagements, and finally, how do we then translate this if we can't write our code to it fast enough in-house? How do we actually translate it into doing the right acquisitions in the marketplace? So with those three ingredients in mind, and with the backdrop of our CEO, Jimmy Rometti's view on innovation as the key transformation in IBM, we have actually built what we call the integrated systems strategy. And I'm not going to take you through this long product presentation. Dieter Monk tomorrow will talk about the integrated system strategy. But the key thing here is that we built on smarter computing on our hardware stack, on mainframes, on power systems, on pure systems, and on our storage systems, towards a higher level of integration where we talk about the market platforms, the market leading platforms, which is our middleware. And finally, we go into industry solutions, which is where we provide the best value to our clients, and hopefully in some of the areas that they have told us that they are out for new applications on. So this is kind of the integrated system stack of IBM. And with that in mind, we actually have made acquisitions over the last 5 years for billions of dollars into spaces and cloud environment, into mobility, into social networking. And you can see that nearly 80% of the investments from R&D at IBM has been spent